They told me to play quietly in the corner of the room I had filled for 30 years. The new owner said it the way you tell a busboy to clear a plate. Keep it soft tonight, Ike. We have a real act coming. So I picked up my own bench and carried it to the corner of my own stage, and I sat down, because a man who has spent his whole life making other people sound good already knows how to wait. My name is Isaiah Calloway. Everybody downtown calls me Ike. I have played piano at the Blue Hour for 30 years, 6 nights a week, since the evening old Saul Bishop unlocked the doors and asked a skinny kid if he thought he could hold a room. I learned that room the way you learn a person. I know which table books the corner booth for anniversaries. I know the widow who comes in every Thursday, orders 2 glasses of red, and only ever drinks the one. I know the song that gets the line cooks dancing in the back, and the one that makes the whole bar go still. Saul used to tell people the Blue Hour did not have a sound system. It had Ike. Folks did not come downtown for the brick walls or the brass rail along the bar. They came because when they walked in out of the cold, somebody at the piano already knew what they needed to hear. I never owned the place, and I never once needed to. What I had was the bench. I taught half the working musicians in this city their first real chords, sitting at that piano after the chairs went up on the tables. A girl named Dee sang her first paid night standing in the curve of that piano while I held the tempo back so her nerves would not run away with the song. 3 of the players who came up through my Tuesday sessions have their own records out now. They still call me on holidays. When the Blue Hour finally painted a new sign over the door, my name was not on it, and that did not trouble me one bit, because every musician and every regular downtown already knew whose hands kept those lights on. Saul passed 2 winters ago and left the club to his nephew Marcus. Marcus arrived with plans. A new menu nobody asked for, lighting that made the room look like an airport, a young man from a promotions company with a tablet, and a list of acts chosen for their follower counts instead of their songs. He started calling my 30 years background music. He said it out loud at a table of his investors, with me close enough to hear, that the place needed a fresh sound, and that I was welcome to stay on, softly in the corner, while the real talent worked the main stage. Some of that real talent had learned how to find the downbeat at my Tuesday sessions. I did not bring it up. You do not argue with a man who has already decided what you are. So on the biggest Friday of the season, with a line stretched down the block for a singer Marcus had flown in from out of state, I moved my bench to the corner exactly like he asked. I played low. I played underneath the conversation, the way you do at a hotel breakfast. I watched my regulars come through the door and look for me at the center of the stage and not find me there. And I gave each of them a small nod from the dark so they would know the old man was still in the building. Then the night went sideways in a way Marcus had no way to control. His flown-in headliner got crossways with the sound man over her monitors, then with Marcus over the contract, and walked out the side door before the second set ever started. The promoter left with her. The house lights came up too bright and too sudden. A packed room of people who had paid a cover was suddenly standing around holding their drinks in a club gone, dead quiet, deciding whether the night was over. Marcus stood frozen at the end of the bar with the color draining out of his face while the room he had bought made up its mind to leave. And then the widow from Thursday, the one who orders 2 glasses and drinks the one, set down her coat and walked across the floor to the corner where I was sitting. She did not so much as glance at Marcus. She looked at me and she said, "Ike, play the one you played the night my herald died." So I did. I am not going to pretend I planned a single thing that happened next. I just played her song. By the second verse, the bar had gone quiet the old way, the real way, the way it used to before the airport lights. By the bridge, a gray-haired man near the back was singing the harmony line Soul had taught him 20 years before. And when I finally brought that song home, the same room that had been 1 minute from walking out into the street stood up on its feet, in a club with the house lights blazing and no spotlight and no promoter and no flown-in star, and they put their hands together for the man in the corner. Dee was there. She climbed up onto the stage, pulled the microphone off its stand, and carried it over to my piano. And she said into it, loud enough that every investor at Marcus's table heard every word, that she had driven 2 hours on her one night off because Ike Calloway was on the bench tonight. She said nobody in this whole city had ever once bought a ticket to a building. Marcus did not have anything clever to say after that. There was nothing clever left to say. He came over near the end of the night, quiet for the first time since he inherited the keys, and he asked me if I would move my bench back to the center of the stage. I told him the truth, which is that the bench was never the thing that mattered. I have watched a lot of men in my life confuse the room with the reason the room fills up. I did not have it in me to make him learn that lesson twice. It has been a year now. The blue hour is full again, 6 nights a week, and the sign over the door finally carries a second line underneath the name. It reads, "Where Ike Plays." Dee headlines her own Thursday nights these days, and she still sings the slow ones, standing in the curve of the piano so I can pull the tempo back when the feeling gets out ahead of her. Marcus learned to ask a question before he decides the answer. The widow still comes in and orders her 2 glasses and drinks the one. And on the right kind of night, if you are paying attention, you can still hear 400 strangers go quiet all at the same moment, the way a room does when it suddenly remembers what it walked in for. So before you tell the quiet man in the corner to keep it down, be sure of one thing first. Be sure the room came for the name painted on the door, and be very sure it did not come for the hands on the piano. If you had been me that night, carrying your own bench to the corner of a stage you spent 30 years building, would you have packed up your music and walked out the back door for good? Or would you have sat down in the dark and waited for the room to remember who you were? Tell me what you would have done.